Perfect. So I'm just going to share my screen again. Hopefully. Can everybody see my screen okay? Here we go. Use slideshow. Perfect. Michael, is that just to ask, can you see my screen and hear me okay?
I can see your screen and I can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect, lovely. So welcome to our introduction to the APC webinar today. So just firstly, just to tell you a little bit about who I am and I guess why it's worth being here and listening today. So chartered surveyor, FRICS, I run a small surveying firm. And also, I'm a partner and founder at Property Elite, so we provide training and support to APC, ASSOT RICS and FRICS candidates. I'm really proud to be an RICS assessor. That's my Apple Watch, let's just turn that off. Really proud to be an assessor. I've assessed prelim review, I've done in-person interviews, ASSOT RICS and been on appeal panels. So hopefully today I can give you some experience from the other side of the table, and obviously that will help you work out how you can succeed in your own APC journey. So if you've got any questions as we go through today, Michael, is there a chat box, do you know? It's just because I can't see that on my screen at the moment.
Yeah, there's a chat box just at the bottom, everyone.
Cool. Perfect. So if you've got any questions, put them in the chat box as we go. And then at the end, I'll run through all of those and then you can shout out, etc. if you want to add anything to the questions. So please do ask, don't hesitate to ask anything. And obviously the slides will be available, they'll be circulated. I'll also put them on our newsletter so you can see the recording and the slides. At the end, we will have a quiz, so stay tuned for that. So today we've got a couple of objectives and we're going to do a bit of a whistle-stop tour through what is the APC, routes, pathways, submission requirements, final assessment interview, and some top tips from me. So what is the APC? Going right back to basics. The APC is what you need to do to become a chartered surveyor, so MRICS. It effectively shows that you have met the high standards of professionalism and competence to become a chartered surveyor. It's based, as you'll probably already know, on meeting required competencies at levels 1, 2, and 3. And I'll explain to you a bit more later on about what those levels mean and what they require from you. We will be discussing routes and pathways. It's quite a common thing to get confused between the two. So your route would be something like structured training, prelim review, straight to assessment. So that's your entry point to the APC. Pathways, on the other hand, are your area of practice, so building surveying, PM, QS, commercial real estate, etc. So just to make sure that you've got a handle on what those are, and it will make everything else a lot clearer. So firstly, I was going to have a look at the traditional routes to getting qualified. So if you're on structured training, it'll either require 12 or 24 months of structured training, and that's split as 200 or 400 minimum days. Structured training, if you're looking at which route is right for you, that would be where you've got an RICS accredited degree. If you want to check that, ask RICS or your university, or RICS have a section on their website called RICS courses. You can then check if your course is accredited. 24-month structured training will be if you've got less than 5 years experience. That requirement's then cut to 12 months if you've got between 5 and 10 years experience. So that will be if you're slightly more experienced. Straight to assessment, the third one on this slide, is again where you've got an accredited degree, but more than 10 years experience. So if you are on that straight to assessment route, it may also be worth looking at whether the senior professional assessment is right for you. So very broad brush approach to that. Straight to assessment, obviously you need that accredited degree, but you'll generally still be doing a lot of the day-to-day work, the technical work. Senior professional doesn't require a degree, and that's where you're in a role with senior professional leadership and management of people and resources. So you'll be doing less of the day-to-day work. So just as a general guide, if you're selecting between the two. Next on the list is prelim review, and my slide is slipped over. So prelim review is if you do not have an accredited degree, but you've got a non-cognate, so a non-SPAIN, non-RICS accredited degree, and over 5 years experience. For all of these routes on this side, the interview structure is exactly the same. The main difference is for structured training, you need to be logging your diary, recording the minimum 200 or 400 days. Prelim review requires an extra stage in the process, so you'll be required to submit your prelim review submission. It's essentially exactly the same as your final assessment submission, but submitted about 6 months beforehand. Once you've been approved for prelim review, you submit your final assessment in exactly the same manner as somebody on structured training. Just with the difference that you do not have a structured training diary for prelim review or straight to assessment. So straight to assessment, for example, you submit your final assessment and go to interview. All of these routes have an
that'd be good, and get that away. And then, so I've got them. I've just asked them if they can sort of kind of get away.
Oh, somebody needs to probably turn their mic off. And we'll look at the submission requirements for each of these later on. So the other route you may have heard of is senior professional, specialist, and academic. They all have a very different interview structure and submission requirement. So just be very aware of that if you do think that one of these routes might be right for you. In the background to these three routes, you still have a pathway. So you might be senior professional on the quantity surveying pathway. You could be academic on the research pathway, for example. So you will have a pathway, technical and mandatory competencies that underline one of these alternative routes. So written submission, this is probably a really good time to be talking about this. In the UK, we've got submission dates coming up in August for land and property, September for built environment. The prelim review dates in the UK are then a month later than the final submission date. So September, land and property, October, built environment. If you are somewhere else in the world, go to the RICS website, top right hand corner, you can change your world region. Make sure you triple, quadruple check your dates, because they will be different in each region for route, pathway, etc. So just make sure that you do check those. The written submission, everything is submitted via ARC. There's now no in-flight paper-based arrangements. Things that you need to check then. So candidate details. It's actually really important to get these right and to make sure that you upload any qualifications, get your work experience, employers on there. If you can't find the details, RICS may need to go in the back end and add them on. If you don't flag it until, let's say, a couple of days before you submit, you'll be in a real rush and may have problems actually finishing your submission. So do it now, ask RICS to make the changes, and you won't be under any pressure or have any problems then when you do come to submit. You then have your summary of experience. This will relate to your chosen pathway, and we'll have a look at the competencies and requirements for that later on. You do have word counts for your summary of experience and case study. There's no leeway on this, no 10% rule. You'll find clarification in the candidate guide, but just to mention it here, it's 1,500 for your mandatory competencies, 4,000 for your technical competencies, and then for your case study, you have 3,000 words. In your summary of experience, it's roughly 150 to 200 words per level per competency. Use less at level 1, more at levels 2 and 3. I'm often asked, is there a requirement for a specific split per level? No, there's not. It's just one word count for that whole mandatory or technical competency section of your summary of experience. Same goes for the case study. Literally, you cannot be even one word over. The case study needs to be a project you've been involved with in the last 2 years. There is an extension of 6 months for session 2 2020. So if you're submitting in the autumn, your case study can be from the last 2.5 years, not 2 years. Maybe unlikely that will apply to session 1 next year, but just keep an eye out on the RICS website for confirmation. Next part is your Cpd record. And again, this is vitally important. So it should generally be 48 hours minimum, at least 50% of your total must be formal. If you're not sure what formal means, the RICS have got a decision tree and a table on their website setting out examples of what formal is and a flow chart, so you can work through that to make sure that you're putting your CPD in the right formal or informal. If you're on 2 years structured training, you need 2 years worth of 48 hours of CPD. If you're trying to look at the dates for those 2 years, roll back from your submission date. So if you're submitting in August this year, your CPD rolls back 12 months from August, and then obviously 12 months before that. It's not based on calendar years or the CPD year for qualified members. So you have to be completely compliant to actually get to the interview stage. Remember that anything in your CPD record is fair game. So make it relevant, proofread what you write, and make sure that you're really familiar with what you've put in your CPD record. The ethics test needs to be completed within 12 months of submitting. It's multiple choice, it's online, and you can take it as many times as you wish. It's also a really, really handy revision tool. And then finally on the list is the diary, and this is for structured training candidates only. The diary is not submitted as part of your submission, but it can be requested by RICS. So when you're putting your diary together, it's really for you. It feeds through into your individual competency pages on ARC. So put specific examples, something really, really helpful for you and your counsellor. Also make sure you don't need to write lots and lots, but just make sure that it's a tool that you can use. The days, so the logbook days you put in your diary feed through into your logbook for your overall 200 or 400 days. So make sure that it's realistic. You've got a nice spread across your competencies. And obviously you can go over the minimum requirements, and that's often really, really sensible just to make sure that you've got the right experience and you're happy to submit. The written submission is the basis of your interview. As an assessor, I base my questions on what you write. So think of that in that if you don't want to be asked about something, don't put it in there. And you can obviously direct your assessors to examples, to potential questions, to areas of focus. So really, really think about your submission from the perspective that it will be what you're asked about in terms of demonstrating competence. We've already mentioned ARC, which is the Assessment Resource Centre. It's the RICS's platform submitting your documentation and monitoring progress. There's some really helpful user guides on the RICS website. My advice to you would be use a Word document for drafts of your summary of experience and case study initially, and then upload them at the end. It really makes life easier, especially when trading feedback, for example, with your counsellor. It also means that you can see a holistic view of your whole summary of experience, for example, rather than just separate competencies on ARC. And I think, you can then look at spread of word count, you can look at structure, you can keep it consistent. The issue then with using ARC is once you want to change something and it's been approved, your counsellor then has to send it back to you. So it can be quite a frustrating process. If you literally just upload everything at the end, you'll probably have a much happier counsellor. And you can benefit from things like using track changes and the comments boxes on Word, which I think for depth and level of feedback, you'll really benefit from that. Things like CPD are also uploaded in ARC. I'd say do that and do the diary as you go and do use ARC for that. Just make sure that you're really carefully proofreading and considering what you write as you go, and that will just make your life so much easier. I know some candidates go at the end of the process, well, I've been keeping my diary outside of ARC, and then they have to upload it all. And obviously that's just an extra task, an extra time that you probably don't have potentially close to submission. So I've put together a submission checklist, and this would be primarily if you're structured training or straight to assessment. Be aware there's slightly different requirements for prelim review and the other routes we mentioned. So number one, make sure that you've got the right experience before you submit and the relevant qualifications or education. So if you're finishing off a master's or a course, make sure you've done it and you've uploaded any details by the time you want to submit. Enroll on ARC as soon as possible, particularly if you're on structured training. You can only backdate your structured training by 1 month. So from the point you enroll, you can then log your diary days. If you're not enrolled, you can't be logging those. So obviously you're then potentially putting your final assessment date back. As I said, make sure you've filled in every single detail on ARC or contact RICS as soon as possible. You then need to complete the submission on ARC, including all of those submission elements. Don't leave anything incomplete or not fulfill the CPD requirements, for example. You may be aware that there's some formatting issues on ARC, particularly you won't be able to use certain types of formatting or bullet points. Really good way to overcome this if you've got any issues with formatting, and it might sound odd, cut out of ARC, put into Notepad or TextPad, and then paste it back into ARC, and often that just removes any formatting issues, and it's a really quick and easy way to deal with that problem. Structured training diary needs to be completed to upload those diary days, but it isn't part of your submission. Next on the list is a valid ethics test. You might want to take it first when you first enroll, and then do it again when you come to submit. Before you come to submit, make sure you've met the minimum RICS requirements, and absolutely essential, proofread your submission multiple times, and often actually give it to somebody who knows nothing about surveying or the submission, and get them to read it. And if they can understand what you've done, if it's a coherent document, that will really help you. They often also pick up just minor typos, spelling errors, you'll have missed through just becoming a bit blind to your submission. Submission windows, there is absolutely no leeway. So a day late and you'll need to wait till the next window. So that just underlines the importance of knowing your deadlines and being ready. And we'll look further at the councillor sign-off, but you need to get your councillor sign-off and proposers and seconders before the submission window closes. So you need to be notifying them well in advance, liaising, collaborating, etc., to get those sign-offs before the window closes. The window usually closes at midnight on the last day. I'd say I wouldn't risk submitting after the RICS office closes, because obviously you've got no support if something goes wrong or you need some assistance. So I'd say aim to submit maybe middle of the window. If you're then delayed, you're still in plenty of time to get submitted. So the councillor sign-off process in ARC, and it might be worth when you get these slides coming back to this when you do come to submit. So you must have done everything on ARC and got it to go green before your councillor can sign you off. So they can only do their part once you've done yours. The councillor does all of the sign-off online using ARC, and that includes every level of every competency. So they have to click in, approve level 1 client care, level 2 client care, for example. Sometimes it's quite difficult because it might show green on the councillor screen, but they still need to click in to approve. So there's a couple of pitfalls we'll look at that often come up. The sign-off process does take time. If you give your counsellor a couple of days, maybe a week to go through and approve and really, consider, reflect, give any feedback, ideally get feedback, a couple of months before you're ready to submit, and use it as a process of feedback, not just a couple of days before. Here's my document. Will you sign it off? And in our counsellor role, I'm a counsellor's candidate. We're putting our professional standing on the line to say that you are ready to submit. We're giving our professional opinion that your submission is good enough. So it's very difficult to do it quickly. We can't rush it. So give us time to approve it. Talk us through what you've done, and you'll have a much better relationship with your counsellor and a much less stressful process. As I said, don't upload to ARC until you've got a final draft. Literally even things like putting a full stop in need the counsellor to log on, send it back to you, you send it back to them, and they approve. So don't frustrate them. And then, yeah, everything is online. You don't need any paper-based signatures and nothing like that anymore. So this is worth going back to when you do submit. You submit everything, you request review, hopefully your counsellor signs you off. Then once every single individual element is approved, they then need to do a final approval. Then you log back onto ARC and you will see everything goes green. And that then gives you the ability to go in to submit for final assessment. And we'll have a look in a minute about how that process works, because there are a few extra things that you'll need to do. Your counsellor won't get any emails saying your candidate's ready to be approved, so you'll need to give them a call or an email to let them know. There is a notification box on ARC, but it actually requires your counsellor to be on ARC to see those. So effective communication is really important. Use your counsellor meetings really effectively. Don't just use them as a formality. Take drafts, go through them, get feedback. Put an action plan with key dates. If you're a PM, do your own chart, do your own program, and use that to keep you committed and driving the process. It is really about your APC, not anybody else's, and it's not for your counsellor to push you through. It's for you to drive the process and include your counsellor to support you. So I think the candidates who do best are those who genuinely push through the process and ask for help and get help and use that to improve their work. Some common pitfalls you might come across in the approval process. So case study approval needs to be done separately. All the competencies need to be individually approved. You then need that overall approval, and then your counsellor also has to sign off a declaration at the end. We talked about counsellor notifications on ARC. Check both your screens to see where your application's stuck in the process. Meet regularly, prepare in advance, and just read the RICS guidance again. Often that, if you've got a question or a concern, that will help to resolve it. And I'd say if you are stuck at any point, you can always email me. There's loads of people out there who'll be willing to give you a hand. And we've gone through the process so many times that don't sit there in silence and stress about it. There's often a really easy fix that we can point you towards and get that fixed. Proposers and seconders, there's often quite a bit of anxiety about this part of the process. So this is not needed for prelim review. It is only your final assessment submission. The signatures are online via ARC, so there's no paper, nothing you need to send like that. All you need is the RICS number or email registered with one of the parties with RICS. They can be M or FRICS. There's no longer a requirement for at least one to have F. One can be a counsellor or a supervisor. The only caveat is that no more than 2 should be from your firm or organisation. So you will need an external proposer or seconder. Without these, you cannot submit. So, you might have got your counsellor sign off and sorted everything, but if you then can't get these approvals back, you won't be able to submit. So get it sorted in advance. Signatories get an email, you know, tell them that you're going to use them as a signatory, ask them if it's okay, let them know when the email should come through, and that's after you've put their details in. Obviously, if they're away, if they don't have time, you know, the email goes to spam, you'll have a problem. So, you know, just give them a call, text, whatever it is, and say, you'll get my request. Be delighted if you'd approve me. If you're struggling for proposers or seconders, particularly that external one, loads of ways you can deal with that. Get networking, ask somebody for a virtual coffee. I've done that for somebody this year who was really struggling because of COVID to find one. Speak to people you know, and that, you know, there will be somebody that you can make contact and build a relationship with to the stage where they're happy to sign you off. So when you are submitting for final assessment, a couple of things you'll be asked to confirm. So things like international experience, special considerations. Often I'm, you know, a candidate says, I'm dyslexic. Should I declare it, or will this disadvantage me? 100%, if you've got anything that you think will affect your interview, the approach that the assessors need to take, you know, how you respond under those conditions, tell RICS. You may be asked for medical evidence. Usually what it will mean is that RICS will make reasonable adjustments, generally in the form of extra time. It does not mean that you'll get extra questions or a more intensive interview. It literally means, let's say you just need a bit more time to think about a question, maybe to write down something, or just to process what you're being asked. You will be given that time. If you do have something that you feel that the assessors need to know that affects you or your approach, I have seen candidates read out a statement at the start of their presentation to say, please be aware of this. It means that I may act or react like this. You can help me by this. And I think that's a great way just to engage your panel and make sure that you are happy and comfortable in the interview. Another key area is the specialist area. Often I get asked about what does this mean? Your specialist area effectively is required for certain pathways, and it helps RICS to appoint assessors who are right for you and your competencies. So don't be worried about that. It won't mean you get a really difficult interview in one area. It just means that you'll have a panel who are relevant and appropriate. You'll get asked to confirm your interview dates. You should get 3 weeks notification. I know at the moment, I think RICS have had 25% more applicants this time, and some people unfortunately are still waiting for panels. I can reassure you, RICS are desperately trying to fill those panels and get dates sorted before, I believe, the end of July. I know some candidates have had less notice. So just, you know, keep in contact with RICS and you know, chase it up if you're concerned. Finally, you can download a PDF of your submission when you submit. Make sure you do that. You should be able to download one after, but that will form the basis of your revision. So it's essential that you have a copy to hand. You can then submit. So you should have a confirmation banner. You may not get any confirmation by email. If you miss the deadline, bad luck, sadly, you'll be looking at the next window. If you're concerned that you don't have the experience, you just don't feel ready, just wait, don't submit. You know, and I think the best candidates are those who are prepared, ready. There's no shame, there's no problem at all. You're going, you know what, I'm just not ready, and it's 6 months after a whole, you know, out of a whole career, out of your lifetime. And realistically, working with your counsellor, they should be honest, you know, and say to you, I'm not sure that you're ready. And then you can then have that discussion, so it's not a surprise at the end. And then obviously prelim review, key difference, you don't need proposers or seconders, but you still do have to undergo that submission process in the prelim review submission window. So some top tips. Use a Word document, keep a running draft all the way through, get early feedback, get all the signatories, prepare in advance, don't leave it till the last minute, particularly if you think that somebody might not be available to sign you off. So if I was submitting in August, let's say, I'd want to be having a pretty finished draft by now to get some feedback. Ideally, I'd like a couple of weeks to then think about the changes I'm going to make and then submit it to my counsellor for final approval. So if that gives you an idea of what you need to be doing, you might be slightly further behind if you're a submission date in September. But realistically, in the 6 months running up to submitting, you want to be really, really well prepared and on the ball. You'll then get your submission, your interview date 3 weeks before. If you do want to defer, you can do so by emailing RICS. You don't have to pay if it's within 14 days of submitting. After that, you will pay a fee, but you can defer. You know, you might have extenuating circumstances or feel that you're just not ready after submitting. All interviews are online. I'm not aware that any will now be held in person, and they are via Microsoft Teams. So make sure that you practice. RICS and Lionheart will actually give you the opportunity to test it out with them, so don't leave anything to chance. You'll have a panel of a chairperson and either 1 or 2 assessors. And we've already just mentioned deferrals at the bottom of that slide. So in your interview, you should have a staff facilitator who'll be there to deal with any technical issues. Your assessment panel should already know, obviously, who you are and prepared. So if there's any conflicts of interest, those should have been declared. RICS do define personal and prejudicial interests, conflicts of interest. And if you go in that interview room and you know your assessor, there is an issue that could be a prejudicial conflict of interest, you will need to step out and let the chair and the staff facilitator know. So don't just sit there in silence. You should then either be allocated just your 2-person panel or your interview rescheduled. We've already covered special considerations and extenuating circumstances. And if there's anything at the start of your interview that you feel you need to raise, you'll be asked, are you fit, well, and able to proceed? And that's the point where if there is anything, I'd recommend raising that. The next thing to think about is interview setup. So obviously you need an electronic device with Teams installed. Could be a laptop or a tablet. A phone's perhaps too small to see your panel clearly. So you might have a big screen to work on. Test it out beforehand, test it with friends, families, colleagues, and don't leave it to the day of the interview. It's the most common area of disruption and delay we find in our mock interviews. You'll need really good quality internet. Kick everybody else off it if you're at home, so you've got good bandwidth, or go to your office if that will be a better, quieter working environment. I'd recommend using an external webcam. If you want to know, I've got my iPad here with some notes on, and I've got a high HD webcam on top of it. You will be asked to do a 360 sweep of your interview room, and standing up with a desktop or whatever it is pretty difficult. So if you've just got a webcam you can lift up and swivel, that will be a lot less stressful. Check also sound quality. You might want to have an external mic if the sound quality isn't bad, and obviously minimize disturbances for noise and ask everybody else to keep quiet and don't come in the room. That leads me on to looking at interview space. So I'd actually say if you can see me on camera, for your interview, maybe camera slightly further back, ideally waist up, so the panel can see you like they would in an interview room. They want to see good eye contact. They want to see body language. Obviously, look at the camera, so have it somewhere that you're looking at the panel, not looking at the screen. So that's key. Ideally against a plain wall with good natural or artificial lighting, so the assessors can see you clearly. Sit at a desk or table, and have good posture, look comfortable. Last thing, obviously, dress professionally. It's a professional interview. You're being a representative for the profession of being a chartered surveyor. So I just say dress like you would for a client interview. So shirt, suit, dress, formal attire. So treat it exactly as you would for meeting a client or doing an APC interview face-to-face. It is no different just because it's online. And I think actually the importance of good body language and eye contact, and even more important, being online, because you are that one step removed from your assessment panel. So if you've got your interview in the next few weeks, you will be facing a 60-minute interview. You'll get an initial welcome by the chair before the time limit starts. That's when you do your 360 view, and you'll have a brief icebreaker chat. Once you've confirmed you're fit, well, ready to proceed, you'll then have 10 minutes for your case study presentation. And that means 10 minutes. The assessors don't want to see you being massively under or over. Perhaps when you get to 10 minutes, 20, 30, you'll just be told, thank you very much. That's it. You know, that is your time over. And that is because the interview timings are so strict. The 10 minutes after, you'll be questioned on your case study and your presentation, followed by 30 minutes questioning on your competencies from your assessors. You'll then have 10 minutes from your chair, and that will focus on mandatories, ethics, and rules of conduct. Ethics is the only area where you can automatically fail. So if there's anything that you get right and you really focus on, make it be that. At the end, you will have a chance to have the last word, and you can come back to anything that you want to. So you might want to make some notes on a pad for any questions that you want to revert to. You can have some notes out for your presentation. I think cue cards are really good. We'll have a look at the visual aid, etc. in a bit. You cannot have a copy of your submission or any notes out after your case study presentation. So everything must be put away. You know, don't even think about having things on the wall, anything anywhere. It's quite obvious to us if you're looking down or you've got outside assistance. So it is not worth risking that. And you could then be subject to disciplinary proceedings by our RICS. So assessment criteria, how do we assess you? We're assessing you holistically. So it is a mixture of looking at your written submission and your interview, but you effectively, if you've met the minimum requirements in your submission, you can't really be referred before you get to interview. You just wouldn't be allowed to go to interview. So substantial issues such as word count or CPD will be picked up even before you get into the interview room. So we're looking for things like good communication skills. We want to see you explain your level 3 advice. We want to know about your roles and responsibilities, and we want to see that you're a safe pair of hands. So we're assessing your competence, and it's not an exam. We base all of our questioning on your submission, and on one of the later slides, I'll just talk you through our approach to assessing. I think that point about it being an assessment of competence and not an exam, you know, nobody will remember everything. You will not get every single question right, but when we're asking you questions, we want to know about your experience. We want to know what you did, how you advised your client, how you adhered to our RICS guidance, legislation. You know, we don't want you to reel off 30 points about something. We want to know why it's important and how you've applied it in practice. And it is a holistic experience stemming from that, which goes back to ethics is that only automatic referral. You know, there will naturally be some questions that you don't know the answer to. And I'm going to talk you through a quick toolbox of potential responses in a couple of slides' time. So at the end of your interview, this is where your panel make the decision, and they do make the decision as, you know, after you've left the room, there'll be a period of reflection. And then the assessors decide. If it's a split decision, it will go to the chair. If it's a 2-person panel, the chair and assessor makes their own decision, although the chair always has the final say in that situation. So the decision is made probably by the time that you've gone to make a cup of tea. So our approach to assessment, we're trying to give each and every candidate a fair interview process and to treat you with respect and dignity. We should encourage and facilitate you to succeed if you meet the required levels of competence. So we should give you an environment that you can succeed in. And I think that is the most important thing to remember, that, you know, if you're competent, we want you to succeed. We're not there to fail a certain number of candidates. You know, we are not biased. You know, we want to give you a fair assessment because we know how much hard work and time you've put into reaching this point. I think actually the fact that the interviews are online is a real benefit in this sense, because the pool of assessors is far more diverse. You know, you might have surveyors who are parents who couldn't commit a whole day to assessing but can now. You know, those who couldn't get to an interview venue. You know, I think just the broader range of assessors will benefit you as candidates. We should make you feel at ease. We should be positive. If you've got any concerns, just please raise those during your interview. We base our questioning on your submission. So again, what you write is fair game. We'll start at the highest level. So if you've declared level 3, you put an example. You know, I might start with an open question going, you've given me this example, please talk me through your advice. We should ask questions one at a time, not a long, confusing or overly elaborate question. So we ask a question, you give us an answer. Don't tell us everything you know. If we want to know more, we will ask follow-on questions. Often if you start to ramble off loads of things, it kind of leads you down a hole you might not want to go down. Sometimes that suggests to us that you're not feeling that confident, and we will then potentially will ask more challenging questions. So listen really carefully, think about what you're being asked, and be concise and considered. We should signpost you to the competency level and example. So if I want to move on to measurement, I'll say, okay, we're going to now look at measurement. In level 2, you've given an example of X. And then that means that you're always aware of where we are and what I want to know about. They will be specific questions. We shouldn't be hypothetical unless potentially it's ethics. So, you know, if you are for some reason asked a hypothetical or a level 1 question, bring it back up. Give us an example. Tell us about your experience in practice, and at level 3, the advice you gave. And we really should be supporting you. And, you know, if you're nervous or stressed, and if you feel like this will be a problem for you in the interview, work on it beforehand. You know, put yourself in situations where you do a mock interview or questioning, or you get challenging questions, and practice how
my thing's
If
frozen.
you've forgotten the answer, if you want to clarify, write it down and make sure you come back to that at the end. So I mentioned a toolbox of answers, so you don't have to know everything, but do know your examples inside out. If you don't know about an example you've stated, that's not going to go down too well. Refer out to a specialist if something's outside of your scope of competence. Signpost us to guidance, or come back to it at the end of your interview. So your case study presentation, we've looked at the 10-minute requirement. You could look at your whole case study, you could focus on a specific issue. There's no requirements for what you do, but make it interesting and show us good communication skills. You can use visual aid, keep it simple. You will be screen sharing. I wouldn't recommend showing something to a camera. If you're nervous, it's hard to keep it still, it's hard to read. Practice using it and keep it professional, clear and concise. I wouldn't use a full, 12-slide PowerPoint. I'd maybe have a couple of key slides that demonstrate what you're talking about. And what we want to see in a presentation is you presenting to a client. You know, how do you come across? Do you come across as, we think, you're competent, you're confident, we trust you advising one of our clients, for example. You can then, either use PowerPoint or a PDF that you then screen share. And again, make sure you've practiced doing that beforehand. So case study questioning will be based on what you've written. The same goes for the competency questioning. That's usually split between your assessors, and obviously answer again using your experience. We can only question you on your declared competencies, so you should not be asked about competencies that haven't been declared. And at the end, your chair's questioning will look at basically anything not covered elsewhere. It could be CPD, mandatories, ethics. So be really, really prepared for that last section of your interview. So my top tips, test everything out, plug in, don't run out of battery. Remember you're on camera. So obviously, you know, don't fidget, don't start doing something else. Just be really aware that it's the same as if you're in front of your panel. Have a good visual aid, and then be prepared and be professional. You know, be client ready, be client facing, and just demonstrate that, you know, 5 days have been referred. So please don't think you need to be alone in being referred. There is no shame. It happens to so many people, and there are so many different reasons for being referred. You know, often it gives you so many ways to improve that you actually come out the other end of the process as a much more, you know, competent and confident surveyor. First thing, which is the top of this, seek support. You know, if you'd like some comments or feedback on your referral report, email me a copy, you know, speak to your counsellor, contact our ICS Lionheart. They are absolutely fantastic to, you know, help give guidance and support you. Remember, you're not alone. Do use your referral report
I think we might have, we're just having a little technical issue there. I think Jen will join us in shortly.
to, you know, see what when.
I think we might have lost Jen there, guys. I'm going to give her a couple of minutes just to say she'll join back in, and she can hopefully answer any of the questions that have been asked so far. If we just want to give it a minute or two. Apologies for, there we go, I should back. There we go, I think we're getting it back now. Hi, Jen.
Oh, Michael, can you hear me again?
I can, yes.
No idea. Ooh. Wow.
I've got you on double.
Okay, hopefully you can hear me again.
Yes.
I have no idea why that happened. Let me just see if I can, let me just put my screen sharing, but I'll carry on talking anyway. Can you see my presentation back?
Can, yes.
Amazing. So, yeah, take a break and then go back to it. Let me slide on. The most common reasons for referral are being underprepared. So actually, in the first place, be ready to submit. You know, it does take a lot of intensive revision and preparation, and just be aware that you're going to need to be able to commit that time. You know, have sufficient experience, and that realistically is something that should be flagged before you submit, not in your referral report. And that's why your counsellor is really helpful to help you get a handle on that. Make sure you've submitted the right hours, formal CPD allocations. Have a good submission. So, you know, things like proofreading, structure, examples, and then often ethics is an issue. So even if you perform fantastically elsewhere, an ethics issue will lead to referral. If you're considering appealing, you do have a right to appeal, but it can only be on a procedural issue. It can't just be because you disagree with the outcome. So it could be something like the timings haven't been adhered to, you've been questioned outside of your competencies. I don't know, there was a conflict of interest with your panel, or, you know, maybe they didn't have the right submission. So it has to be a real procedural issue. You need to submit your appeal within 21 days with the fee of getting your referral report. So you don't have that much time to consider and put it together. Process takes around 7 weeks, and you cannot appeal an appeal decision. If you're successful, it doesn't mean that you then pass, you'll be reassessed. So it doesn't overturn the first decision, unfortunately. And you should be given a new assessment date before the next session of interviews, if that makes sense. Also, if you've been referred, think about an action plan. So work on presentation skills. It could be controlling stress and nerves. Improve your submission. Update anything that's suggested in the referral report. Think about new RICS guidance legislation. It could be the new ethics guidance, which should come into force from September, potentially. Be aware of that. Address any gaps and continue your CPD. When you do come to be reassessed, obviously submit when you're ready. It might be 6, it might be 12 months later. You'll be treated as a first-time candidate. So the panel will not know you've been referred. They will not have your referral report. You don't have to declare it. You'll obviously have to update your CPD record and ensure that your case study is still valid, and you'll then need to be signed off again by your counsellor. So before I take some questions, I have a question for you, and I'd like to, if you'd like to take part, please email any responses to this. So give me an example of when you've acted ethically. I'll take all the answers which are ethical, and I'll draw a winner from the hat on Friday. And actually ignore this, the prize will be an ebook copy of a book I've written called How to Become a Chartered Surveyor. So it'll be really helpful for preparation for your interview, etc. So do email me your responses, and I'll happily obviously also give you some feedback if those are ones that you want to be putting in your APC submission. We talked about downloading the slides. Please do. They'll give you loads of helpful information, anything you've missed or that we've talked through quite quickly. And we'd also love your feedback on, the slides will go through, your feedback on today's session. So there is a link in the slides. Let us know what you thought, any ideas for future events, because I'd love to come back to talk for Matrix and give you some extra pointers and advice. So moving on to questions, and I think if I go to the chat box, I'll now run through the questions. If you've got any more, just add them on, and then I'll see if anybody wants to shout out as well if they prefer to do that. So, okay, first question. Yes, is the answer to that. Recording slides will be circulated. That's been answered. Are we informed directly if our diary has been requested by the assessment panel? Kirsty. Yes, so I understand it's maybe only 4 or 6 diaries have been requested by RICS over the past few years. So unless you've got a real issue in your logbook day, something really, really obviously wrong, it's unlikely. You'll get an email from RICS asking for your diary, and I think you get maybe, I think it's 5 or 7 days to submit your diary after it's requested. So you do have a bit of time to just make sure that it's you know, in good order. But realistically, you should have done that in the process. You will be informed if your diary is requested. Matthew's asked, what are the built environment submission dates and assessment dates for next year? So 2021, I'm guessing you're asking. So built environment structured training submission date is 15th to the 30 days of September, 31st of March. Prelim review is a month later in April, so 15th to the 30th of April. Interview dates are generally going to be May and June, probably, for built environment. RICS generally do release those at the time of submission, so you'll be able to have a look at those, but generally as a guide in those months, those are when they'll be. If you go on the RICS website at the moment, you should be able to see the assessment dates for this session this year, and you can probably roughly work out that they might be similar next year. Scott, can you please go back over the requirements for a proposer at secondary for prelim review and final interview? Of course I can. Yeah, so Simon said that. So when you submit your prelim review submission, you do not need a proposer and 2 secondaries. When you resubmit final assessment, so after you've been approved for prelim review, everybody who goes to submit for final assessment needs those signatures. So you don't for your first bit of prelim review, you do for your final assessment. Tom, yeah, so RICS have confirmed it to me, and I'm guessing that they'll put it on the website. So that should just be automatically applied to CPD and case study validity. The RICS do have, they've got guidance, a bit of guidance on how you change the dates for your CPD. So you will need to do that if you want to take advantage of that. RICS also had an extension on submission dates this spring. If your employer supported that because of COVID, you're on furlough. I'd say contact RICS, or just keep an eye on the website if you want to check if that's been extended, because I have to say I'm not certain that that COVID extension has, but the extension on CPD and case study for everybody will be. Liam, Jen, when are the deadline dates published for submissions for relative assessment dates? So the submission date's the same each year. So February and August for land and property, March and September for built environment, 1 month later for prelim review. Assessment dates are usually published at the time of assessment. 47. Okay, number 1, what is your biggest bit of advice for somebody sitting their APC? Where do you think most people fall down and should prepare more adequately for? I actually think just being prepared, and being prepared means something different to all of us. So if you feel like you've got a knowledge gap, address it, do some CPD that addresses it. Don't think that it's going to be easy. A couple of weeks revision beforehand won't cut it. And I'd say if you do little and often all the way through, you'll be so well prepared by the time you come to sit, you will feel really happy and confident going into that interview room. And then you also asked, how complex do the key issues need to be? And what are the assessors looking for? So case study needs to have 2 or 3 key issues. And I'd say just do the case study on 1 project, not multiple projects. Doesn't need to be the most complex, the most high value project, and neither do your key issues, but your key issues need to relate to your technical competencies, and they effectively need to be an issue or a challenge, the options you considered, and the advice and recommendations you gave to overcome those. So they've got to be something where you were involved and you advised your client to deal with them. So the assessors are looking for evidence of level 3, and they're looking for substantial issues that you had to jump over those hurdles to come to a conclusion. Hopefully that helps. Okay. Did you say diary log can only be backdated by 1 month? Yeah, so when you enroll, you can ask for your enrollment to be backdated by only 1 month. You need to do it by emailing RICS with a supporting letter from your employer. I guess the only slight thing to think about, if you've been on a sandwich replacement year, you won't have enrolled whilst you're on placement, but you will need to provide that evidence to RICS so they count that year of structured training towards your 24 months. That's the only bit where the process might be slightly different. I'm at the bottom of the questions box now. So does anybody else have any questions, feedback, anything else you want to raise? I'd be very happy to answer them. No, well, if anybody's got any questions they don't want to raise online or on the recording, if you literally Google Property Elite, you can find my contact details, drop me an email, very happy to answer them. If you go on our website, there's a little chat box, bottom right hand corner, shoot a message there with any questions, and that comes through directly to me. Pleasure to be here, so thank you very much for being patient and listening, and hopefully I've given you a bit of insight into the APC, and really good luck.
Yeah. Jen, I'd just like to thank you for your time as well. Thank you very much for lending us your valuable time and knowledge. So thank you for that. I'll circulate the slides. For anyone that's still on the call, we are maybe scheduling another APC session with Jen next month, and Elise Thompson, who's recently passed her APC. So if you know anyone that would find that helpful, please go to the 1947 Club Next Generation page and we'll upload a flyer and link there. But in the meantime, thank you very much, Jen. That was super helpful.
Pleasure. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. See you soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.